My stepbrother stole the house I paid for, and my parents let him. I stopped paying, and now I'm the villain. I need to say this before I lose my mind. My own family turned against me, and I still can't understand how I let this happen. Did I let them use me? Or was I just blind to the truth all along? For 8 years, I've been paying the mortgage and property taxes for my parents' house. 8 years. And I did it gladly because they sacrificed everything for me. I thought it was only fair to help them retire without financial stress. I believed I was doing the right thing. But now I feel like I was played for a fool. Like I was just a bank account for them, while my stepbrother lived without a single worry. Ever since he came into our family, my parents treated him like he was the golden child. He was the perfect son. Obedient, respectful, always doing everything to please them. Meanwhile, I was always the one arguing, questioning, pointing out when things weren't fair. And that's why, in their eyes, I was always the selfish one. But I wasn't selfish. I just saw him for what he really was. A manipulator. When my mother married his father years ago, he immediately became the favorite. I was still young, but I noticed how the rules for me were different than the rules for him. If I argued, I was difficult. If he argued, he was expressing himself. And now, all these years later, nothing has changed. When my parents retired, they asked me to help with the house. It's our family's future, they said. We're doing this for all of us. And I agreed, thinking it was the right thing to do. But my stepbrother? He never paid a cent. He never contributed anything. And yet, little by little, he convinced my parents that he deserved the house. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was just his usual tactics, charming them, playing the role of the good son. I should have known better. Everything changed last year. My stepbrother lost his job. And because he had no savings, of course, he had never saved a dime. He decided that the best option was to move back in with our parents. At first, I thought it was temporary, just until he got back on his feet. I was so wrong. A few weeks ago, I found out something that shattered me completely. Not only was my stepbrother planning to stay in the house permanently, but he had also convinced my parents to sign the house over to him. Yes, you read that right. All my life, I believed that when my parents were gone, the house would be sold and I would get a fair share, especially since I was the one who had been paying for it all these years. But no, they changed the deal without ever telling me. And when I confronted them about it, they told me they didn't want to sell the house because it had sentimental value. That my stepbrother had a right to live there because it was his home, and that I shouldn't be so concerned with material things. Material things? I had been paying the mortgage on that house for 8 years. I had sacrificed my own financial security, my stability, my future, only for them to tell me that it didn't matter. That was the moment I made a drastic decision. If the house was his, then let him pay for it. I stopped paying the mortgage. I stopped covering the taxes. I stopped worrying about whether or not the house was falling apart. If he wanted to live there forever, then he could take responsibility for it. But my parents, they were furious. They called me selfish. They said, "This isn't the right time to do this. Your brother is still struggling." And yet, not once did they stop to ask about me, about everything I had already given. My stepbrother, of course, played the victim. He said I was tearing the family apart over money. But the truth is, he always expected me to keep paying for everything. What they don't know is, I found out something even worse. 2 days ago, while organizing my financial records, I found a letter from the bank. At first, I thought it was a mistake. My stepbrother's name was on the property deed. Not just recently. For years. They had already given him the house. All this time, while I was paying for it, they had already signed it over to him. This wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. I don't know what to do. I feel nothing but rage, pain, and frustration. But if they think I'm going to stay silent about this, they are so wrong. Couldn't sleep that night. My mind raced with the weight of the realization. The house that I had been paying for all these years wasn't mine. It was never mine. It had always been part of some secret plan. A scheme in which I was nothing but an unwitting participant. I stared at the ceiling, my thoughts drowning in anger, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. My parents had made it clear. I wasn't the son they trusted. No matter how much I provided, no matter how much I sacrificed, I was always the outsider, the selfish one, the problem child. Meanwhile, my stepbrother, the golden boy, had played the long game. I had spent my whole life trying to prove to my parents that I was worthy of their love, their respect. And for what? For them to hand over everything to him behind my back? The next morning, I drove to my parents' house, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I needed answers. I needed to hear them admit it, to acknowledge what they had done to me. When I arrived, the house felt different, almost as if it wasn't mine anymore, which apparently it wasn't. My mother was in the kitchen, washing dishes, as if nothing had happened. My father sat in his recliner, staring at the TV. And my stepbrother? He was lounging on the couch, feet up, acting like he already owned the place. I clenched my jaw. We need to talk. Now. They all turned to look at me, but only my stepbrother smirked. My mother sighed, drying her hands on a dish towel. Daniel, don't start this again. My father, still staring at the TV, muttered. We did what was best for the family. I laughed bitterly. Best for the family? Do you even hear yourselves? At first, he acted hurt. Daniel, do you really think I would do this to you? His voice was soft, careful, as if he actually cared. You're my brother. I thought you understood. Then, after a pause, he sighed dramatically. Look, I'm just making sure this house stays in the family. If it were up to you, you'd sell it and leave them with nothing. I couldn't let that happen. I felt my stomach turn. He was enjoying this. You mean you're making sure it stays yours? I snapped. You didn't pay a dime for this place, and yet, somehow it's magically yours now? My mother looked uncomfortable. We owe him this. My mother whispered, voice heavy with guilt. He's always been the one who looked after us. He never questioned us, never turned his back on us like you did. And you don't trust me? I asked, my voice breaking. Silence. That hurt more than I thought it would. My stepbrother shrugged. Look, Daniel, I'm just doing what's best. If the house were in your name, we both know what would happen. You'd sell it, take the money, and leave our parents with nothing. I felt like I had been slapped. You think I would do that? We know you would, my father said firmly, finally looking at me. You've always been independent. You never needed us. But your brother, he's always cared for us, always made sure we were okay. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had been the one keeping them afloat financially. I had been the one paying for this house. But he was the one they trusted. I turned to my stepbrother, and something in his expression shifted. For the first time, he looked victorious. You're unbelievable, I whispered. All these years, I was the bad guy in your little story, wasn't I? He gave a fake, sympathetic smile. It's not personal, Daniel. It's just reality. I exhaled sharply. It was personal. It had always been personal. At that moment, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let this go. I had spent my life believing that my parents' approval was worth fighting for. But now I realized it wasn't their approval I needed. It was justice. I didn't say another word. I turned on my heel and walked out the door. But as I left, I could hear my stepbrother chuckling under his breath. He thought he had won. He had no idea what was coming. I drove aimlessly for hours, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. My blood boiled with rage, betrayal burning in my chest like acid. How could they do this to me? How could my own parents believe him over me? I was their son. I had sacrificed my money, my time, my sanity. For what? So they could hand over everything I built to a man who had never lifted a damn finger for them? I pulled into a parking lot, my mind racing. I needed a plan. I needed proof. That's when it hit me. The documents. I had been the one making the payments. I had the bank transfers, the receipts, the contracts. They thought they could cut me out of my own home and I would just roll over? No, not this time. I drove straight to my apartment, threw open my desk drawers, and pulled out every financial record I had. Every single transfer, every single dollar I had put into that house. I spread them out on the table, my hands shaking. Then, as if the universe itself wanted me to know the truth, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Daniel, I need to tell you something. Call me. I frowned. Who the hell? But something in my gut told me to listen. I dialed the number. A woman's voice answered immediately. Daniel, it's Aunt Rebecca. I blinked. Aunt Rebecca? She was my mother's cousin, we barely spoke. What's going on? I asked, my voice sharp. She hesitated. I heard what happened. About the house. I clenched my jaw. Yeah? And? She took a shaky breath. Daniel, I can't stay quiet about this anymore. There's something you don't know. My stomach twisted. What? A long pause. Then, your stepbrother isn't your real brother. I almost dropped the phone. What? He's not even related to your parents, she whispered. He's not your father's son. He's not your mother's son. He's not your brother at all. I staggered back, gripping the edge of the table. That doesn't make any sense. They raised him. They love him. I know, Rebecca said. That's the sick part. They never told you the truth. They took him in when he was a baby. They raised him as their own. But, Daniel, he always knew. My mind was spinning, pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. The favoritism, the blind loyalty, the way he had spent his whole life making me the bad guy. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Why didn't they tell me? Because they were ashamed, Rebecca said. They wanted to pretend it wasn't real. And he played along. Until now. I swallowed, my throat dry. So what? He manipulated them his whole life? Just to take the house. Rebecca exhaled. I think so. And I think he always planned this, Daniel. He's been playing the long game. Making himself the perfect son. Making you the villain. So that when the time came, they would choose him. The words tasted like poison in my mouth. They had chosen him. Over me. Over their own flesh and blood. I ended the call, my heart pounding. This was it. I wasn't just fighting for a house. I was fighting for my dignity. My name. My life. And I was going to expose the truth. Even if it destroyed everything. I don't remember how I got here. The drive back to my parents' house was a blur. My heart pounded in my chest. My hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I felt like I was suffocating. Like the walls were closing in on me. I had spent years wondering why I was always the outsider in my own family. Why no matter what I did, it was never enough. And now, the answer was so clear it was almost laughable. I was never meant to be enough. Because they had already chosen. I walked into the house without knocking. My mother was in the living room folding laundry. My father sat in his usual chair, reading the newspaper. Everything looked normal. But I knew the truth now. The man they called their son, the man they had betrayed me for, stood near the hallway, arms crossed, watching me with that same smug indifference he always carried. Daniel? My mother asked, setting down a neatly folded shirt. Her voice was soft, careful, like she already knew something was wrong. I ignored her. My hands trembled as I pulled a thick folder from my bag and slammed it onto the coffee table. The force echoed through the room, making my mother flinch. Sit, I said, voice cold. My father frowned, lowering his newspaper. Daniel, what is this? Sit down. My mother exchanged a worried glance with my father before lowering herself onto the couch. He followed, sighing as if this were some minor inconvenience. And my stepbrother, the liar, the manipulator, the snake, just smirked and leaned against the doorway. You've lost your damn mind, he muttered, shaking his head. I didn't react. I couldn't afford to lose control now. With slow, deliberate movements, I opened the folder and spread out every single document I had collected over the years. Bank transfers, mortgage payments, tax receipts, all with my name on them. My mother gasped. My father's face paled. And my stepbrother? He just smiled. You knew, didn't you? I asked, my voice dangerously low. I turned to my parents. You both knew. Daniel? My mother started, reaching for me, but I stepped back. Don't. I took a shaky breath, trying to steady myself. All these years, I continued, my voice growing stronger. I thought I was helping you. I thought I was building something for this family. But the whole time, you were just waiting for the right moment to cut me out. My father shifted uncomfortably. It's not like that. Then what is it like? I snapped, slamming my fist on the table. You gave him everything. And you lied to me. My mother wiped at her tears, shaking her head. Daniel, we love you. But your brother. He's not my brother. The words came out sharper than I intended. My father flinched, but my stepbrother just let out a small, mocking chuckle. Well, he said, voice cool and unbothered. Took you long enough. Something inside me snapped. I lunged at him before I even knew what I was doing, grabbing the front of his shirt and slamming him against the wall. Say that again, I growled. My hands shook, but not from fear, from pure, unfiltered rage. He just grinned. You never stood a chance, Daniel, he whispered. I clenched my fists tighter, my breathing ragged. I wanted to hit him. God. I wanted to wipe that smirk off his face permanently. But then, my father's voice boomed through the room. Enough! I let go, stepping back as my stepbrother straightened his shirt like nothing had happened. My mother was sobbing into her hands. My father looked at me like I was the disappointment, like I was the problem. You're making a fool of yourself, my father muttered. I let out a hollow laugh. A fool? I gestured wildly at the documents on the table. I paid for this house. I built this home. And you gave it to him. You always had more. My mother whispered through her tears. You were stronger, more independent. But your brother, he needed stability. He needed to know we loved him. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. At my expense? I whispered. She didn't answer. My father rubbed his temples. It's done, Daniel. There's nothing you can do now. This is his home. I stared at them, my pulse roaring in my ears. Then I turned to the man they had chosen over me, the stranger they had called their son. He looked so damn pleased with himself. You bastard, I muttered. He tilted his head, smiling like he had just won a game. I told you, he said, voice light, almost amused. You were always the outsider. You just didn't realize it. I turned back to my parents. Tell me he's wrong, I begged. Tell me I meant something to you. Silence. A heavy, deafening silence. And I knew. I had already lost them. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Update. I don't remember leaving that house. One moment I was standing there, staring at the people who had chosen him over me, and the next I was outside, my breath ragged, my hands clenched into fists so tight my nails bit into my palms. The world around me felt distant, like I wasn't really there, like I was watching my life unravel from outside my own body. I had given them everything. Years of my life, my hard-earned money, my sacrifices, and they had thrown me away like I was nothing. No, I am not nothing. I wouldn't let them win. Not without a fight. I spent the next few days in a haze of exhaustion and fury. I barely ate, barely slept. All I could think about was how to turn this around, how to take back what was mine. I gathered every piece of evidence I had. Bank transfers proving I had been paying for the house. Mortgage statements with my name on them. Emails and texts where my parents acknowledged my contributions. I reached out to an old friend, a lawyer, someone who had seen cases like this before. Daniel, he said after reviewing everything, shaking his head. This isn't just a betrayal. This is fraud. His words sent a jolt through me. Fraud. That meant I had legal ground. That meant I could fight back. What are my options? I asked, my voice hoarse. You can sue for financial compensation. At the very least, you can demand the house be sold and your investment returned. That was all I needed to hear. I filed the lawsuit. The moment my stepbrother received the notice, he exploded. Are you out of your damn mind? He screamed over the phone. You're seriously taking this to court? You stole from me, I said coldly. I'm taking back what's mine. You're making a mistake, he growled. Mom and Dad are never going to forgive you for this. I laughed bitterly. You mean the same parents who threw me aside like garbage? Yeah. I'll live. Then I hung up. The lawsuit wasn't just about money. It was about exposing the truth. And the moment it became public record, people started talking. It didn't take long for the news to spread. Relatives, old family friends, even distant acquaintances started asking questions. Why did you give the house to him and not Daniel? Wait. Daniel was the one paying all these years? Why didn't you just split it fairly? At first, my parents ignored it. Then they defended him. Daniel is just bitter. My mother told someone in a message that was later leaked online. He never respected our decisions, and now he's throwing a tantrum. A tantrum? I had paid for their home. I had kept a roof over their heads for years. And I was the one throwing a tantrum? Then came the final blow. A distant aunt, one of the few people in our family who had always been on my side, reached out. "Daniel," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" She hesitated. "You know how your stepbrother always claimed he was adopted?" I stiffened. "Yeah. He wasn't." A cold chill crawled up my spine. "What do you mean?" "He's not adopted. He's your father's illegitimate son from an affair years ago." I felt like the floor had vanished beneath me. All this time, I had thought he was just some orphan my parents had taken in out of pity. But in reality, he was my father's real son. And I was the one who had been lied to. Everything clicked into place. The favoritism. The way my mother had always defended him, even when he was clearly wrong. This wasn't just about manipulation. This was about secrets and guilt. They had given him everything because they owed him. And they had thrown me away because I was the mistake. I showed up at their house one last time. Not to beg. Not to reason. But to watch them burn. When my parents opened the door, their faces fell. They knew why I was there. "Daniel," my father started. "Maybe we should talk about this." "Too late for that." I cut him off. I stepped inside and slammed a thick folder onto the table. The DNA results. My father's face drained of all color. My mother covered her mouth with her hands, eyes brimming with tears. And my stepbrother? For the first time in his pathetic life, he looked scared. "You lied to me my whole life," I said, my voice calm, steady. "Daniel," my mother whispered, but I ignored her. "You let me believe he was adopted," I continued. "You let me believe I was the bad son while you handed him everything behind my back. And for what?" I turned to my father. "To cover up your shame?" Silence. Pure, suffocating silence. Then my stepbrother snapped. "So what?" he shouted. "You still lost, Daniel. That house is mine. You think you can take this from me?" I smiled. "Check your email." Confused, he pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. And then his face went white, because attached to that email, the official court ruling. The judge had ruled in my favor. The house had to be sold. And the money? Mine. All of it. My stepbrother let out a strangled sound, his hands shaking. You can't do this." I leaned forward, smiling coldly. "I already did." 2 weeks later, the house was on the market. My parents begged me to reconsider. "We have nowhere to go," my mother sobbed. "Should have thought about that before," I said, emotionless. And my stepbrother? He disappeared. Ran off somewhere, probably drowning in his own humiliation. And me? I took the money, moved to another city, and never looked back. Some people might call me cruel. But me? I just call it justice.